What is up, guys? Rogue TCG here. This is going to be my Mutant Control deck profile for Master Duel. This is Season 2 Master Duel, so things might change in the future. I gotten pretty good results. I'm still in Plat 2 at the moment, but I have a positive win-loss record. I don't know exactly what it is. If you've seen my previous video, you've seen that this deck is fairly competent in certain ways. Sometimes you draw like a lot of bricks since you have to place a couple bricks. But I'm just gonna quickly go through this just so you can get a general idea. So for the hand traps, we're running triple maxi, we're running double ash, and triple infinite impermanence. So in total, we are running 8 hand traps. I think all of these are self-explanatory. We did decide to cut down on the ashes and increase the imperms because we wanted to be banishing. We don't want to be banishing ashes. We can banish other mutant cards for the mutant effects, and we'd also banish imperm for the mutant effects to get into arsenal without wasting valuable continuous spells or traps like floodgates. So we run triple M05. When M05 is normal, you add a mutant monster other than itself to hand, and then both of the mini mutants have the effect where you contribute it, banish a card from your face-up field or from your hand to special summon a mutant of the corresponding card type from your deck to your field. If you banish a monster, you summon Mutant Beast. If you banish a trap, you get a Mutant Arsenal. If you banish a spell, you get Mist, but Mist is really bad. So Mutant MO5 and Mutant ST46 form like a continuous loop in a way. So M05 is almost always going to be adding ST46 because it is the other monster. ST46, when normal or special, you add a mutant spell or trap. You're almost always adding a trap. And it has the exact same effect as the mutant M05 because it is a mini mutant. Mutant Beast can only be special summoned by that mutant card. It cannot be targeted by monster effects. And when your opponent activates the spell, you can banish any card from your hand or field to negate the activation and then banish it. Then if it's destroyed by a card, you can add a banished mutant trap back to your hand. So these, when destroyed, add back your resources. Mutant Beast is probably one of the better ones. It's a shame it has such a low attack and defense values, but you gotta do what you gotta do. You're always going to be banishing M05 or SC46 for it because of a card we'll mention later. Arsenal is the trap one. This one's a lot better because it's a 3k attacker. It can't be special summoned by a mutant, can't be targeted by trap effects, and then when an opponent's monster activates an effect, banish a card from your hand or field that can include itself, target a card in the field, and then banish it. And then if it's destroyed, you add a banished mutant spell. There's only 3 mutant spells in this deck, so it's most likely you're not going to be actually resolving that effect, but if you do, you're just getting some advantage off of it. We're running triple prosperity because we only really need 3 cards in our extra deck, and we want to be finding floodgates. There could be an argument to exchange this with extravagance. Maybe later on, I do an IRL mutant deck profile where I will be running extrav over prosperity just because I value the 2 additional cards. Mutant fusion. Mutant fusion is just a polymerization while in hand, but if your opponent activates a card or effect during your turn, it becomes kind of like a should-all fusion, but better, because you can banish one from deck, and then any amount from hand, field, or grave. So yeah, this is pretty good. It's a good way to try and bait your opponent to like imperm or like use a monster negate, and then just slap in a mutant fusion to get out Ultimus or Synthesis. Mutant Evolution Lab. When it's activated, you can special summon a level 4 lower mutant, so a mini mutant from your hand or from your banish zone. So that's the main way you're recycling your mutants and getting advantage. So yeah. All your mutants gain 100 attack for each of the banished mutant cards with different names, and you can essentially mulligan a single mutant card once per turn by putting it to the bottom and then drawing a card, because you don't want to be drawing the big mutants. You want these to be in deck. Given the Master Rule, this technically Mutant's a little bit worse in Master Duel than it is in TCG, just given the fact that E-Telly's at 3 in TCG and is not in Master Duel. So we're running 2 E-Tele, the maximum amount that we can run, and 1 Called By. Called By is just generally pretty good because it stops hand traps, but this deck list is very tight to make it reach 40. Some of these Floodgate ratios you can play around with, like maybe up summon limit and lower skill drain. We run triple Imperm as mentioned previously. 2 Mutant Cry. Mutant Cry is a trap card, fusion card, that can be activated during only the main phase by shuffling fusion materials from your field, graveyard, and face-up banish zone into the deck. So it helps you recycle your mini mutants and your big mutants. And I believe that's actually it on the card. But the main reason you're being using this is because Mutant Synthesis, when we get to it, when it's summoned, it pops a card on the field. We run 1 IO because we have quite a few spells that we actually want to be resolving, and it's just a Floodgate. And we could always turn off our own Floodgates by banishing them with mutant cards for their effects. We play Skill Drain. Skill Drain hinders us less than other decks. It stops our mutants on summon effect, but we can still use their on-field effect because they tribute themselves for cost to banish it. And since Skill Drain only negates effects on field, when you tribute it for cost, it won't resolve. The card won't be on the field, so it'll resolve, and you can banish the Skill Drain for an arsenal or something. This deck loves playing out of the banished zone, so we run triple Macro Cosmos. Unfortunately, this is the one downside, one upside that Master Duel has over TCG, is that it has macro to 3 and TCG only has 1. But you gotta work with what you got. We play 1 Summon Limit. Summon Limit is a pretty good card, yeah. I would up this if I could find ratios to cut, maybe cut a Skill Drain for an additional Summon Limit and play 2 too. But Summon Limit is really good because by normal summoning a mutant and then activating its effect, that's exactly 2 summons. Not a lot of decks can out a spell negate or a monster banish that would only using 2 summons. We play Mutant Expansion. This is essentially a slower version of E-Tele. You special summon a level 4 or lower mutant from your deck when it's activated, and then its on-field effect is if a level 8 or higher mutant monster you control will be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card from your field instead. So that'll occasionally come up, but the main reason it's a continuous trap is because it allows you to get advantage, and then if the mini mutant stays on field, you can immediately tag into Arsenal in the next turn. So that's it for the main deck. I think everything is a little bit self-explanatory. Some of these ratios can be played around with, like maybe cutting down on the arsenals. I have found that 2 and 2 work very well, just because you don't want to be running out of arsenals given the high volume of trap cards that you run. A lot of this deck is essentially everything after Ultimates is personal preference. Like, you don't need to run any of this. You could technically run whatever you want. I do recommend, though, in a pros board, to be running double synthesis, where it's as I mentioned previously, a Trident, and then on a quick effect, after your opponent activates a card or effect, you can activate it to make that card unaffected by cards your opponent activates of that type. In my Drytron match, my opponent tried to orange light a synthesis, which I could chain synthesis to make it unaffected by monster effects that my opponent activated. And then when it's destroyed, you can add any banished mutant card from your banished zone to your hand. So this one's pretty good. Main downside is it needs 2 different attributes, so you can't use, for example, a synthesis plus a mini mutant, because all the mini mutants are water, but the big mutants are different type, like earth and fire. So what you're going to be doing typically is in a ST46 line, if you normal ST46, add Cry, activate ST46, get either Beast or Arsenal, activate one of their effects, like banishing themselves for cost. Then you activate Cry, shuffling both the banished Beast or Arsenal and then the ST46 back in the deck to summon this, and that will resemble off of 1 card and 1 unknown. It resembles 2 interactions with my opponent, plus recycling the materials that I started it all off with. Mutant Ultimates is the big bad boss monster of the deck. If you get this out, you're winning the game. You need 3 level 8 or higher mutant monsters. That's synthesis, any amount of beasts, and any amount of arsenals. When your opponent activates a card or effect, when a card or effect is activated, You can banish a mutant card from your hand, graveyard, or face-up field of the same type to negate the activation and banish it. I believe that is, yeah, it is a once per turn, but if you have Evolution Lab up, you're most likely going to be getting an advantage by getting more attack off of that too. Since the mini mutants tribute for cost, they're most likely to be in the graveyard, so you can banish it. So when you activate Evolution Lab again, you get advantage off of that. So Ultimus is really good, and then when it's destroyed, you can add 3 banished mutant cards to your hand, which is really good. So these are all gonna be personal preference. This is like whatever I had laying around. I didn't want to craft any new cards per se. Dark Mist because MO5 is a level 2. Mech Beast Grand Pulse because this is a level 3. And I believe this is a Spell and Trap Destruction. Yeah, it's just a MST. Zeus since we're running XEs. Link Spider for Nibiru. Gravity Controller because we run fusion monsters. Cerberus, Unicorn, and Phoenix, just to get rid of stuff. Pentastag to let our Ultimus run over things. IP Masquerade to maybe go into Unicorn or Underworld Goddess. Boral Sword to try and hit for game because this deck does have a little bit of an issue presenting lethal. And Underworld Goddess of the Closed World to get rid of problem cards, like Crooked Cook. This deck is a very interesting deck. It is unlike other control decks where you just have to sit on the infinite advantage that you gather. You more have to be a little bit more proactive in getting the advantage and getting the right cards to make the right plays. It's a little bit higher. I would like to think it's a higher skill ceiling than Eldritch, where you just sit on your ass and just monkey flip all day. I'm not saying this deck needs a lot of skill to play, given that we're literally running 8 Floodgates. But, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do to try and get some wins. This deck is also better than TCG because of Mutant. Mutant is like one of the other mini mutants, and when it's when a mutant is specialed or normaled, I believe, or if you control like a mutant, you can special it from hand, and that has the same effect as the other mutants, except you have to pay life for a cost. So it's a little bit worse than the other mutants, but it does bring itself out of the hand for free. So it is a free material. I would also recommend running Predaplant Verte Anaconda in this list. That is another option that you can run. And there's also other versions of the list that you can run. There's also Nemesis that you can run in there to recycle your mutants if you would like to, since they're all technically different attributes, like water, fire, earth. You can get all that. Nemesis Keystone gives you a lot of advantage and lets you essentially get infinite mutant beasts because it returns to your hand at the end of the turn. Mutant Thunder Dragon's an interesting idea that I played around with in paper. It's quite interesting given that if you banish like a Thunder Dragon Roar, you get quite a lot of advantage. But given the Master Duel ban list, it is probably going to be a lot better in here just because we have Colossus, so it lets you set up another Floodgate from the extra deck. And I believe that's it. Special shout out to D-Shifter. D-Shifter is a really good hand trap in this deck list because it's not actually dead if you draw it again. It's just fuel for making another mutant beast. So that is one of the hand traps that I'm replacing Max C with in TCG because it is a turn-long Floodgate, essentially, that makes your opponent not want to commit for losing resources. But I should technically up the summon limit and lower the skill drain. It's just that I want to play with some more skill drain and less summon limit. TCG, you can replace some of the macro cosmoses and the IOs with there can only be ones, since the deck plays underneath of it, because the mini mutants are psychics. This is a beast, this is a machine, so this is also a psychic, and this is also a psychic. So you play underneath of it pretty well. So kind of the goal is to enter a simplified game state where you have like a single mutant beast for arsenal, a Floodgate, and like an ST46 in rotation or something like that, just to keep getting a more advantage while your opponent is unable to. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is a little bit of a longer video. I wanted to go in a little bit more in depth in this deck profile because I'm really a big fan of this archetype, and I hope that they give it some more love later on. instead of stupid stinky heroes, stinky heroes need to stop getting support. I'm going to attack the person who designed Jade and Yugi.